Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? Geoff Mosher here alongside Adam Caplan. And hey, Adam Caplan, training camp is here.
Yes. It's
Aren't
Thursday
you excited?
Morning. Yeah, let's see. It's Thursday morning, folks. Hopefully, if you're driving into work, wherever you are in the country, if you're overseas, you're actually farther ahead on Thursday. But anyway, look, training camp is not. Yeah, I know. It's just not like we know it. That's why we don't have to talk about who's doing well and who's not doing well because there's no practices for a couple weeks. But like you said, as we get started here, Geoff, at least camps have started officially, but there's a lot of news which we were not quite expecting. I know I was not expecting to have a big list of players who are opting out of playing this season.
I know. We got a lot of news. We've got first news on Marquise Goodwin, the wide receiver who has opted out. We've got 3 players going on the I'm going to call it they called it the reserve COVID list, so we'll go with that. We are going to take a look at the wide receiver picture now with both Marquise opting out and Alshon Jeffrey on PUP. And we'll take a look at some of the areas of the roster that may still be under construction. As you mentioned here, that we're still a couple of weeks away from what we know about training camp. So I'll remove my tongue from my cheek now. Yeah, training camp's here, but it doesn't feel like it. And so we've got a lot to talk about. I want to remind everybody, our last episode, we fused together interviews from Todd Hermans and Todd Hermans and Trey Thomas, and they gave us some great insight on what to look for with new left tackle Andre Dillard, and of course with Jason Peters making the change to right guard. So catch that on any podcast platform that you listen to. If you haven't, I thought both guys were really, Adam, not just on point, but very objective in how they viewed, both Dillard and Peters and the changes in store for both of those guys.
Yeah, and what Herman said was interesting. So he actually had me, after hearing him on our show it'll get you in and out. His part of the interview is 28 minutes. Todd detailed it so well that Jason and obviously Doug Peterson actually backed it up in a big way in what he said to the media earlier this week. But Todd basically said, look, he'll be able to make it this move. He made a great point about Jason is built more for guard really than tackle. He's only 6'4". He's squatty. He's got shorter arms. Todd made a great point. As tall as Todd is, over 6'6". Yeah. He didn't have the reason why he got moved inside, Geoff, and then also to right tackle. He really didn't have long arms for being a tackle. So
right,
he made a great point among many, and I applaud both Trey, obviously, on his great breakdown with Dillard. We learned so much with that interview with Trey on Dillard and Jeff Stoutland and others, and Todd's on obviously Juan Castillo and all the other coaches that he had over Howard Mudd. I forgot he had the Mudmobile. Yeah, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember the Mudmobile. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, do you remember Kyle Devan, one of the many starting inside linemen? Yeah.
Wait, did he start for the Eagles?
He had to start for the Eagles. Remember the Eagles' offensive line got so beat up that not only was Kyle Devan a starter, but at one point they had to sign, I want to say Jake Ryan as a street free agent.
Jake Ryan.
He had played with the Titans. I think he'd also played with the Colts with Mudd.
God, I don't know.
And he had to get thrown in there. Well,
I got one for you. I got one for you. Steve Vallis.
I remember him. Yeah. Now, did he actually play, or was he just?
Well, here's what happened. I was working for the Eagles from a media standpoint. It was before I went to ESPN, and he had this long goatee. He might have been with the Jaguars before that, and the Colts, obviously, because I'm sure he must have been Howard Mudd related or something. So anyway, he came in, and I remember being in studio with Dave Spadaro and Bo Wolf and Chris McPherson, those guys, and Fran Duffy, and he walks in. I'm like, who is this guy? This place, to your point about they were so decimated by injury, they were just taking guys off the street, and this was yet another guy that he's not Max Gene Gillis, but
nope.
Anyway,
I will see your Steve Vallos and raise you a Matt Tobin.
Well, no, he just retired. He retired early. Yet another player from Iowa who could have still played, and he retired early. He just didn't want to play anymore. But Kyle Devan, yeah. Oh wow, that's Kyle a good call by man, dude. That's one of the best scrubs you pulled up here. In the 2 years we do the show. That. That's actually you need to get a button for that. I don't know what kind, but you need to get something.
I expect it in the mail. All right. We do have three guys that are not scrubs.
Yeah.
They're actually really important players that we need to talk about. Lane Johnson, Nate Gerry, and Jordan Mailata, each who report to camp, get their testing, and it turns out they test positive for COVID-19, and they are on the list. The reserve/COVID-19 list is how it was placed. So, Adam, I think what we can do here, and I know you've researched this and looked into it. So I want to give you.
Yeah, I talked to legal on Wednesday about it.
Yeah, I think people want to know what this means as far as when are they going to be cleared from the list? How injured, or I'm sorry, how sick are they? What are the deals? As far as we know, we've heard from Lane Johnson on Twitter, and he said he feels fine and that he had been tested prior because he went to the offensive line mastermind summit that we talked about, and he was tested prior and after that and was negative. So now he's testing positive. So what does it mean for these three guys?
All right. So I know there are reports out there that you'd have to stay on the list for 2 weeks and 3 weeks. That's not the case. I talked to legal on Wednesday, and here's what they told me. So to come back to the NovaCare complex and be with the club, let's say with Lane Johnson, okay, he had a positive test, but he's asymptomatic, which means not showing symptoms. 10 days have to pass since the last positive test, or 5 days have passed since the initial positive test and receives 2 consecutive PCR virus tests, at least 24 hours apart within that 5-day period. Plus, he's got to get clearance from the club's head team physician. So it's somewhere between 5 and 10 days, that area. In fact, this is interesting. I picked this up late Wednesday. We've had one player return from the being on the COVID list. The reserve list.
Who's that?
Yeah, it's a rookie. That's why, because they were there a week before, Geoff. Some undrafted free agent for the Dolphins I never heard of. When I got the personnel notice from the NFL and I'm looking at the transactions, I'm like, wait a minute. How did this guy come back? That's what really, it's funny. That's what, other than the Eagles players and some other players, Kenny Golladay of the Lions was a big one that's on the list. But and we'll explain to you also what that list means, or testing positive is. But once I saw that, I'm like, okay, how the hell is someone coming back? So they explained it to me. Now, following a positive test and you're not feeling well, which means you're symptomatic, at least 10 days have to pass since those symptoms first appeared, and at least 72 hours have passed since you last experienced symptoms. So that's going to be longer. Now, did
you say you have to pass a test twice?
At least 10 days. Let's say you're symptomatic. Okay, let's say you're not feeling well.
Okay.
And you test positive. At least 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared, and at least 72 hours have passed since you last experienced symptoms. So you gotta not only have to pass 10 days since they first appeared, you can't have those symptoms for 72 hours. So it could be a little.
That's an interesting. Just thinking about that. Written into legislation makes me wonder if there's a gray area.
Well,
I mean,
what if you're
feeling some symptoms, but we saw already with the Miami Marlins. What if you kind of hide how you're, you may not.
Yes. If you test negative, this is a great point. So I'm someone who rarely gets sick, right? Because I'm not around people. My wife and I don't have any kids, and I've not been around a lot of people in my career. The only times I've really gotten sick are at the combine. Ironically, why? There are a lot of people around us. So anyway,
it's cold. It's usually very cold.
But people coughing on me. One agent coughed on me. I won't say who it is, but about 5 or 6 years ago, I know I got it from this person because this person coughed. We were face to face within 3 feet. Next day, I felt like crap. I'm positive that person got me sick. Anyway, but when you eat, let's say 10 days have passed, but you could still feel not right. And you place, to your point, that 72 hours, Geoff, obviously, you 3 days after, you got to be honest. Tell your team, tell the head physician, because that's who's got to give you final clearance, and be honest about it. Because after what we saw with the Phillies and Marlins, particularly the Marlins, Geoff, these players better be honest, because you could get your players sick. Look at Rudy Gobert. He was in that situation with the Jazz. So. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that follow-up point. Guys have to be honest, because if they're not, this could be really ugly, and we all need football.
So the question I would have to wonder, we've already heard from Lane Johnson. He says that he's feeling good. I don't believe, as of us doing this podcast Wednesday night, July 29th, that we've heard specifically, right, from either Nate Gerry or Jordan Mailata. So
Jordan Mailata, yeah. Yeah, my understanding with Mailata checking into it is that he's fine.
Okay.
I do not know whether he tested positive or let's explain it. Just because you go on that reserve list does not mean you tested positive. It means you could have been around people who are sick. So they want to make sure you're quarantined. And then you keep
by the way,
testing.
You're right. I'm sorry. We're making an assumption here. We don't even know if Nate Gerry and Jordan Mailata have actually tested positive. They just may be around someone.
Yeah.
Right.
And quite frankly, I would not report anything unless I talk to the club or the player or the agent, and they said I could report it on these players anyway. So I'm just not going to do that. But all I know, I'm told that Mailata's going to be fine. He's doing well. And that's where that's at. And then Nate Gerry, we'll see. But here's the thing, though. You could still study at home. You could do virtual learning. You could, whatever meetings they have, you could still do it that way. So you're not missing any time. But the problem is if one of these guys not only tests positive, when he wants to return, it's not clear to and doesn't feel right, that could extend his time on that list. Because if you're Jordan Mailata and you're not back practicing when they're allowed to practice mid-August, that's a problem, Geoff.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that's a big thing is that this is why the structure is in place. A, this is why the players, I believe, fought for testing every single day. And B, this is why the format is the way it is, where mostly everything going on for the next 2 weeks is strength and conditioning. It's not practicing. You're not on the field doing 7-on-7s or 1-on-1s or anything. So if Lane, Nate, and Jordan, let's say it's the baseline time that they missed, no problems, no issues, they'll be fine. They're not, as you just said, they're not missing any practice time because nobody's practicing right now. Everybody has 2.5 weeks before they actually get on the field. So as long as this is not a severe case for anybody, or again, these guys, Nate may not even have it. He just might have been in contact.
We don't
with
know.
Right.
Right. We
don't know.
Right.
Then it's not a nightmare scenario. I feel like people, Adam, were very quick to look at some of the names and some of the people going on the list. And as you mentioned, the wide receiver, Kenny Golladay, Lane Johnson, certainly those names are going to stick out, but this is why the format is the way it is. And by 2.5, 3 weeks from now, you should have people, at least most of the guys, ready to go, because if they've tested positive now or were near somebody or whatever, they're supposed to be quarantined.
Look, if you just look at the country, Geoff, majority of the cases are not serious. However, just reading a lot of pieces that were factual and confirmed, there are a decent amount of cases where there are some cardiac issues going forward, and you have to make sure that, which I didn't even know until I started really looking into it the last week or so. Because I'm, as a human being, I'm going to go to camps. Like, I'm going to go to Eagles camp and be in tier 3. That's where they'll put me, wherever the hell that is. That's the farthest away from the practice field, but I want to check it out anyway.
You'll be at Citizens Bank Park.
Exactly. That's what it's funny. I'm trying to figure that out because I want to see the Browns. There's certain teams I want to go see, but it's probably not worth me going. But anyway, so that's it for those 3 players. But it's, as Geoff just said, it's really not, as far as we know, as bad as people are making out to be. Because again, we don't know if they tested positive, because we don't know if they tested positive or if they were around people who did. So let's not run to conclusions. And hopefully Mailata will be back soon, because he needs all the reps he can get once they're allowed to practice. Let's hope he's back before that.
Right. So I want to say this because I've said it on our podcast. I want to repeat it. We have been asked a lot in interviews, especially on 97.3 ESPN, where we do our football at 4. You can catch that on our YouTube channel. Do we think that the NFL is going to pull this off? And you and I both say the same thing. They're going to try. They're going to exhaust every single option, and they are going to try to pull a season off. There have been times, and still right now, I do have some doubts about whether they'll be able to see it through to the finish line. However, none of those doubts that I have been further amplified by any of the news of the last 2 days. I've expected this. Again, I think the format's in place so that that the league knew people would test, and that's why there's no practices for 2.5 weeks, and we'll see. But I am no, my needle has not moved either way. So I'm not going to take the news of the last 48 hours and overreact, and nor am I going to try to paint the rosiest picture possible and say everything's going to be fine.
So I'm having this conversation with my wife. She sees what happened in Major League Baseball with the Phillies and Marlins, obviously the Marlins, and she sees the list of, I guess she's watching sports, and maybe national news or local news, and anyway, all the players in the NFL going on the COVID list. So she's like, what are they going to do if all these players are not ready for the regular season? I said, they're going to have a season. They'll trot out guys, rookies. I kind of explained to her, she's not a big fan. She watches football only because of me. And so I'm like, I try to explain to her, and she got it immediately. She made a really funny line. So I said, they'll stick guys out there who you probably never heard of. So basically it's just football, right? And people want to watch it. I said, exactly. People are going to, they could, I said, they could stick out 18-year-olds on the field. They're going to watch it because it's football. Yes. Right. So you don't, listen, the level of play is not going to be what we expect in the beginning of the season. And by the way, we don't need to give out the entire list of players who've opted out. I'll be honest with you. I really underestimated that, man, as we move on here. I did not
expect there would be more or less.
Less. I'm shocked. Because I didn't quite realize the scope of players who've had respiratory issues.
Well,
obviously, that's a part of it. That's a big thing, man. Yeah, the diabetes and
right. I'm not surprised because a lot of these guys, especially offensive linemen, Adam, they have weight issues, and that leads to respiratory issues. It leads to what is that? Sleep apnea, and like Nate Solder has battled cancer, and so is his child, and Marquise Goodwin in the pregnancy that his wife was going, miscarriages that
we'll get that sec.
Yeah. So I mean, it really didn't surprise me. I kind of expected this level, and as far as superstar power I'm not coming down on anybody who's opting out at all. I'm just saying, like, it seems like the superstars are in, like the people that you as a viewer want to see most weeks are still in. Nate Solder is an okay offensive lineman who's honestly been
that'll hurt them though. That'll hurt them.
It will. I absolutely think it'll hurt the Giants. No doubt about it.
He's been disappointing, but that is not good.
Right.
Left tackle, you're highly paid left tackle, but you know what? He's got a family issue, and we totally respect his decision to do that. So there are a lot of good players who've opted out, but when you're right though, the star level, but like at Kansas City, Damien Williams, who's technically their starter, but obviously Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to take his job, and he would have taken it anyway. Michael Pierce was got an incredible contract coming over from the Ravens with the Vikings. He opted out.
Right.
And now the big one though, Eddie Goldman. My God, that's a huge injury for
that.
Them.
Is a pretty big one. Yeah, that's true. Eddie Goldman's, but
not a star player, but he's NFL people know he's a star. But fans, unless you're a Bears fan, you probably don't know about him. But that's a big
such
blow.
A blue, good lunch pail blue.
Really good player. Yeah, really.
But
good
player.
What?
They still have Akeem Hicks and they still have Khalil Mack, so I think the Bears are going to be all right in that regard. But he is a really good player. Absolutely.
Yes. Just one more point on. The agents I talked to this week made a great point. They're the two things I picked up on this, which have definitely happened and probably will still continue to happen. The more players opt out. If you have a child on the way or you have young children, the fear the agents told me from the players is that they're going to pick up COVID and bring it home, even though they know they shouldn't go out, and there's some specific rules for going out on the town. You have to be around, you have to be in small groups of people and so forth. They're so scared of bringing it home. And that I have such a respect for, players who thinking about their loved ones. Look, let's transition to our wide receiver issue with just everything that's happened there. Marquise Goodwin. I totally get it. I told people there was a lot of bad information out on Marquise Goodwin. A lot of people saying, oh, he's injury prone. He's this. Look, he's had injury issues. Talking to a 49er source had literally less than zero to do with what happened last year. He would have played quite a bit for them had he not had the issue his wife had, obviously, trying to conceive. They finally, thank goodness, had a healthy child. And after, I guess they had 3 attempts, but thank goodness for him, and he's healthy. And the morons who went on his Instagram and took shots at him, I mean, grow up, really.
Man, I didn't see that.
I felt bad. It's, but, look, okay, so let's transition to receiver position. A lot of news here. A lot of going on here, Geoff, if you want to get started.
They traded for Marquise Goodwin, and they traded for him specifically because of his speed And if there's something were to happen to Desean Jackson, not that Marquise Goodwin is Desean Jackson, but he could at least step into that Z spot and provide that downfield presence that has been provided by like guys like Torrey Smith before. And that opens things up. And without that, Adam, I mean, it puts more pressure on Desean to have to stay healthy. And then it really kind of puts pressure on the rest of this receiving core that we've talked about a lot as far as being a lot of question marks. Someone's going to have to develop quickly.
Yeah. So Desean obviously is their starting Z.
Right.
We'll get to Jalen Reagor in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Alshon Jeffrey started. We might as well get to some of the news here. So we know about Marquise Goodwin will not play this season. So I'm told he was definitely going to play at Z. That was for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's one. I know some people think, well, he's just a Z in anyway, and Jackson and Reagor could play there. Probably Hightower, Watkins could play there, and that's fine. But here's why, and Geoff just mentioned it is important to note that he was one of their only 3 veterans on the roster. Now they only have 2. The 2 remaining rostered veterans, guess what? They're coming off of significant injuries. Desean Jackson, I'm told, had both sides done on his groin, not just one.
No.
That was last year, but okay.
Right.
And who? Well, remember, though, he didn't have the surgery early. He decided to play on it. Well, obviously, you're going to make it worse. Right. So he had the surgery, and he's fine. He's doing great. Alshon had the lift franc injury. My sense is, Geoff, this is called an educated guess based on intel that I've had for 6 weeks, I'd say. Going back to probably like middle of June.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he will not be, barring a setback, he's not going to be on reserve PUP to start the season. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I just don't think so.
Okay.
No, I didn't say he's going to play week 1.
Right.
I didn't say week 1. I don't know what the hell he's playing.
Right, because if he were to start on reserve POP, then he automatically has to miss
6 weeks.
I believe the first 6 weeks, right?
Yes,
and then you
correct.
get a couple of weeks to decide to put him on.
Right. So this gives them. You remember 2 years ago?
It was like Carson Wentz, right? I mean, he didn't play in the season opener.
Right. Well, no, but Alshon didn't play 2 years ago, coming back from his shoulder surgery against Tennessee. But remember, there were reports that he was going to start the season on reserve, but they didn't because they knew he had a chance to come back before the 6 weeks. It might have been week 5 when he returned. I don't remember exactly, but fact of the matter is with Jeffrey, I know he's running. He's doing well. I cannot put a timeline on when he'll be exactly ready, but my sense has been for several weeks that he would not go on reserve. I just don't know. I can't find out when he's going to be ready. I've tried.
Okay.
I'm not ruling anything out here. I just know. Look, we started reporting on this at the combine. Actually, it might have been, I think it was the combine. I put my first report out that he's going to be on the football team no matter what's out there. He's going to be here. I know you thought they might be able to trade him. Geoff, let me ask you a question. All right, I'm going to throw this at you because you were pretty strong in this. Let's say he's ready by week 3. Do you now? His contract's untradeable.
Well, I'm looking at the wide receiver situation now.
Well, yeah. Okay. Let me finish.
Yeah.
Okay. That plays into what you just said. Let's just say that some team was willing to take his contract, and he's healthy. He's running in August. Looks like he's going to be ready sometime in September. Obviously, it could be week 3, 4, 5. Who the hell knows? But let's say he's going to be ready earlier than we expected. Do you trade him, or do you keep him?
I'll say this: optionality is a great thing. So
I want yes or no.
Well, here's the thing: if it's 6 weeks into the season, 5 or 6, he's ready to come back.
Yeah.
But Desean's healthy and playing well. Reagor's looking like a pretty good first-round pick, and he even got a little bit of development at Arcega-Whiteside.
All right.
Then I think you might. But if your only real reliable, healthy receiver or good receiver at that point is Desean, then it might make sense to just hang on to Alshon there.
Right.
I can see that.
Right. So Alshon and Desean are 30 years or older. Desean turns 34 in December. I'm not counting on him. You know, there's zero chance he plays 16 games. It's just not going to happen based on his body type. And I know he's worked out incredibly hard, but history shows guys he gets a lot of stuff tissue injury on trainer, and I know it helps him. But I don't see it. Now, Jeffrey, by the way, Geoff, I mean, who's going to take $9.9 million in base salary? I mean, come on. It's
not a lot of teams. No. Yeah. I have this nightmare scenario of Desean like coming up a little lame, like 5 days in practice before the season opener. And then the Eagles have to play the opener with basically, Jalen Reagor and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and Greg Ward as your top 3 wide receivers.
Can't happen. You just hit it.
That would be awful.
You just extrapolated my thoughts. So we'll see on Jeffrey. I know people want to quote me on these kind of things, but again, it's more of a hypothetical. It's more of a hypothesis based on talking to a lot of people and getting opinions. But I just can't. I don't know whether it be weeks 1, 3, or 5, and I just know that when I first got information in January, I said 9 to 12 months is what I was told. 9 months put him into September, but I never thought September could mean, it's mid-September. I don't know. Again, you're guessing when you're 9 months out. Who the hell knows? So we'll see.
Don't you think at this point that it's just perilous enough that Howie should probably go out and get another veteran wide receiver?
Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. So that brings up another point. Even if Jeffrey's ready to come back by weeks 3 or 4, let's say, Geoff's right. First of all, that's a painful injury. Ask Deuce Staley what it's like. Deuce had the setback in 2000, and it killed Eric. Remember Eric Rhett, the veteran running back grinder?
Oh yeah, I remember.
That ended his career. So
look, Jalen Mills came back from it, and I thought he struggled a little bit coming back from it last year. Not that he was a great player to begin with,
and he came back real late, if you remember. So you gotta. Yes. I don't count on anything here with Jeffrey. I know he's been working out like a demon. His best shape. You see, he's all cut up, and that's great. Good for him. But let's look at the potential signing of a veteran. So let's look right now to start the season, assuming Jeffrey is not on reserve PUP, though we don't know when he'll be playing. X's should be Jeffrey. Reagor said in his press gathering this week that he's been learning X. We'll see what happens at training camp, though. But Jeffrey, Reagor, I need to find out, Geoff, about Hightower. I would think that long term, if he builds his body up because he's tall, he could be an X. We know JJ's an X. He's not a Z.
He's pretty much only an X.
Right. So they're good there. When I say good, at least they have players.
They have
players.
a body
they
there.
Players.
Yeah.
Right. They have players. Your Z's are Djax, Reagor, and no more Goodwin.
Right. That's really. Then you got to figure out whether Hightower and Watkins can make the team at that position.
Or maybe Hightower gets cross trained. Okay, they do a lot of that.
Yeah. By the way, Greg Ward's going to be in the slot.
He is only a NF.
That's all he can do
in the West Coast.
Right.
Yeah. And then Watkins. Yeah, I don't know. We're scratching the bottom here. He's a 6th round pick. Though I'll tell you what. I've talked to other teams. His tape was better than Hightower's. Believe it or not. He could
Watkins'
flat out
tape was better than Hightower.
Yeah, I've talked from other teams I've spoken with. He's got I'm going to be real interested to see if he could contribute. Now, Manasa Bailey can flat out fly, and he's got decent size.
Right.
But he's a small school kid. He's a long shot. But now the question is, to just outline all that, do they really need to sign a veteran, Geoff?
Well, you just said your X receivers right now are J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and potentially Jalen Reagor. So one guy who didn't look good last year,
and Jeffrey,
another guy,
and Jeffrey, obviously.
Well, right now we're assuming that he's not even going to be available. So
you mean week 1?
He can't practice.
Yeah.
Well, he can't.
No, but he can practice anytime. No, he can practice anytime he wants if he's ready.
Yeah, but he's not ready. So I'm talking about the roster as it looks right now, and assuming that in a couple of weeks when they start to practice.
So you're saying what can we count on for week 1? What do we know right now? Who do we know is going to be available? So Jeffrey's up in the air. So your X is then okay. So as you're saying, Reagor and Whiteside.
Yeah,
but you got to see. There's a school of thought because he's only in his 2nd year, and Whiteside, he had the heel injury. I'm told they had against the Lions, and then he had the the plantar fascia injury in December. Okay, no more excuses. He's healthy. He's got to play, man. He's a 2nd round pick.
Sure. Look, they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel, so they really only are going to have, an X and a Z on the field a lot. And then if Reagor can master the Z quickly and transition to X, you can have Reagor. If Arcega-Whiteside still struggles, you can have Reagor and Desean as your 2 outside wide receivers. But I don't see why right now it's a bad idea to look out there and get either a Taylor Gabriel on a 1-year deal, maybe a Jerron Brown, Paul Richardson, somebody.
Yeah, here's my list. So this is my list. Paul Richardson, I'm told they're not in on him because of his injury history. Demaryius Thomas is in his 30s, injuries, Achilles. He's near the end of the line here. I don't see it. Taylor Gabriel's a great one. That's my top guy.
Yeah, he knows the offense.
He knows the West Coast. He played in it with the Bears last season with Matt Nagy.
Right.
He had the concussion issues. He's 30 years old but could run. He's better off on the slider. He's a movement Z. Jerron Brown's a good red zone guy. He's tall. Average runner. Jermaine Kearse can run, but he's had injuries. Chris Hogan, I don't know what happened to him. Man, what
Stop playing with Tom Brady.
I don't know. Yeah, he just fell off. Dontrell Emmons, a tall guy who's an average runner. And Tavon Austin's more of a special teams returner, a bust of a first-round pick who just never made it with the Rams, and he obviously was with the Cowboys.
If anything, he's more of to me, like almost a running back, pass-catching running back than he is a wide receiver.
Right. They moved him to running back, the Cowboys, a couple years ago. So if I were the Eagles, I would either sign Gabriel. I still would work him out or bring him in. They're talking to personnel people around the NFL. They don't think they're going to be workouts for several weeks. They don't think that that they're going to be allowed to bring players in to work them out. The NFL's personnel office told the teams to hold off for a while. They don't know an exact day or week, but my sense is from talking to personnel people, it might be a bit. So, I'll tell you what, though. I would love them to do this, as we're kind of alluding to. Take a hard look at, do this. Go into training, these, after 2 weeks, review Rager's progress. Arcega-Whiteside's progress. Hightower's progress. Watkins' progress. See where they're at. If you think they're on the come here without preseason, of course, then maybe you ride out the Alshon situation. See when he's going to be ready. Look, I could be totally wrong.
Progress. When you say progress, do you mean on? Because they can't do anything for 2.5 weeks.
So, no. I'm talking about when they could start practicing.
All right. So when they start practicing, you have to have a first team, a second team, and a third team, right?
Okay.
And you usually practice with 11 and 12. So do they have enough right now? If you're practicing your first team, 11 personnel, you've got Desean at the Z.
Yep.
You've got Greg Ward in the slot. And I would think you have Arcega-Whiteside as your X, right? And you'll mix and match. You might get Jalen Reagor in there a little bit, but those are
training
your
camp,
top
right?
three.
For training camp, right.
Your second team, 11 personnel, you'll have Reagor. You'll have what? Hightower.
Rager's your Z. Maybe Hightower's your X. I need to find out. I'll find out.
Maybe Watkins in the slot. So then you get to your third team. Oh, I guess you have enough because you still have Manasseh Bailey. You have Robert Davis.
Right. He's still there. Right? Yeah, they have 9 players able to practice. Jeffrey cannot right now.
Well, that really just leaves them, honestly, one hamstring away from now we need a guy. I don't know. I feel like maybe Howie should probably look at this a little bit sooner than waiting a week or two to progress. Just for practice bodies.
I'm just concerned with I'm thinking more of the regular season not having enough veterans.
Yeah.
That would be because if again, I could be completely wrong with Jeffrey, but just that my sense has been I've been on this Jeffrey thing for like really 3 months about when that we had it, just basically that he's going to play for them this season. And since I'm going to say mid-June, I kept hearing that he's going to be ready to contribute this season in the first half. So that to me was a point that he doesn't need to be put on reserve PUP. But again, I just don't know. We're in late July here. This is Thursday as you're hearing this. For those who are the early birds, I couldn't tell you. But now for fantasy, I'll tell you what. I'm picking up Alshon late. Because I'll tell you what, if he's what's that?
I said you are, huh? Okay.
I'm going to, man. I'm going to add him in my draft. So I'm going to add him. G-Jack late. This passing offense is going to be good this year. If they could protect, they're going to be able to run this year. There'll be no excuses unless they all get hurt.
True. If they're healthy, that they should be much more upgraded from the year before. We will have to do a fantasy football-like pod, something closer to the season.
We should have a draft. Maybe, you know what we ought to do? We should get, we should have a contest. You and I, and then 10 of you got to get our folks. If you've not been on our Facebook board or inside the birds board, man, you're missing some great conversations, man. People are crazy on that board. They're really smart and they're big into fantasy too. I can tell. We should do a draft for those guys. We'll figure it out in mid to late August.
By the way, Inside the Boards will be an awesome basketball podcast that you and I should do. Inside the Boards.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, hoops. Sure.
It's just on big men, on rebounds and big men.
Yeah.
By the way, since we're on the subject, I want everybody to know they should download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use the code ITB for a special offer when you sign up. That's code ITB for a special offer when you sign up only at DraftKings Sportsbook. By the way, I was happy, Adam, to hear Jalen Reagor say that he's learning not just the Z, but also the X, because that really kind of validated what we talked about. I don't know, it must have been a month and a half ago when I reported that the plan was to get this guy the ball in a variety of different ways from a variety of different spots. And then Doug came out and said, well, he's learning the Z first. But, I mean, we've seen this with a lot of players, especially first-round picks. As soon as they're able to pick up what they need to pick up, then they can move on and expand the playbook for them. And Jalen's just too explosive of a player to just put in one spot and be a backup to a guy. You don't draft a guy to be in the first round to be a backup.
Right. And he's an interesting player, folks. You know, he's just over 5'10", but he is rocked up. He dropped the weight, I'm told. He showed up to the combine with a different trainer. That trainer, I don't know why they told him to put weight on. That was a mistake.
Yeah.
So he obviously he didn't run as well as they would hope. And then he dropped the weight, got down to 195 to 197. That's his playing weight. He just jacked up strong. He's built like Percy Harvin, really similar build, but the difference is Jalen Reagor is way more explosive. But he's going to be, I know some people said, could he be like Harvin in terms of his ability to play running back? Yes. I mean, you could flip him, you could toss him the ball. Watch, if you go to YouTube, you could see his TV tape. There's a great 9-minute clip from a company called Stadium, and they do a great job of cut-ups, and you could see him carrying the football. And also, Geoff, explosive was one of the best returners of college football. Phenomenal in that area.
And I think that's why we've talked about, him being very close to how the 49ers used Deebo Samuel last year. He was a receiver, but he also had about 200 and something rushing yards. I don't know if he returned anything, but the bottom line is they just figured out ways to put the ball in his hands and let his explosion do the work. And Jalen runs faster than Deebo Samuel. At least his tape speed is a lot faster. Or his tape speed's a lot faster.
Jalen's way faster than Samuel. The thing with Samuel is because of the scheme, he gets so much space. My God.
Right. It's amazing.
Right. But no, you were right. No, look, and here's what probably happened. I'm just guessing here a little bit. So at the time that Peterson told the media about Reagor, just learning the Z, well, yeah, that was in, what was it, in early June or something?
Yeah, around what would have been OTAs, I believe.
Right,
yeah.
right. So yeah. After that, he did well enough. And they're playing a cross train him anyway, so they gave him more and they gave him the X, and then he's eventually going to have to learn the slot. That's got to happen because he will kill teams in the slot. He's so strong.
By the way, good on the Eagles for bringing in Jason Avant.
Thank you for mentioning
coaching intern.
Yeah.
Look, I said this today on 97.3. Hands, I don't think hands can be taught. Jason had some of the best hands I've ever seen. I don't expect him to come to the Eagles and all these guys are going to have better hands than they've had. But as far as understanding the game, how to play that slot area and be physical, how to set up different cornerbacks that are guarding you, with certain moves, there's going to be nobody better at explaining the game tactically than Jason Avant, who has done shows with Inside the Birds and us and Mayfair. I mean, he's been a guest on our stuff. He's really good. I think he's a guy who commands respect and people will listen to.
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. You talk about hand usage. I remember being told a year ago there was a specific way they would teach the receivers to catch the football, which is almost, I don't want to say they told them to catch it with their body, but the way that they were teaching it, some people had questioned. So I wonder if under the new receivers coach, Moorhead, and now with he must have an assistant because every position coach has an assistant. I don't know who that. I can't remember who that guy is, but bringing Avant in, I'll be really interested to see it would sound like we'd be able to see it, but I'll ask.
Right.
Is if Avant, once they start practicing in mid-August, if he sees something, because he's only a coaching intern, will he say something? Hey, you should be coaching it like, do not catch it with your palms up like this. You got to keep them out like the Chris Carter way. That's the way you do it. And I'm telling you,
triangle. You got to look it in the triangle.
Yeah, since Mike Rowe did such a phenomenal job as a receivers coach, as you well know, Geoff. And then once he became the OC, something happened with the way that they were catching the football.
Right.
And their drop numbers have not been great. So hopefully, Moorhead, who's a former NFL receiver, and I've heard great things about talking to a couple coaches who work with him at Vanderbilt, and now that he's here and everyone's signed on time and ready to go. Let's hope that they get better production from this group, because, man. So a friend of mine said, are we going to still see this same slow team? I'm like, no, you don't have to worry about that. Speed will not be the problem, but catching it.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, but catching it might be.
Hands.
Wouldn't that be terrible if the Eagles were so much faster than they were last year, but dropped anything that was put in their hands?
But Alshon's had some drops, but he's not a bad drop guy. Deshaun's got really soft hands.
Yes.
Rager had I don't have the drops. I don't have them in front of me. I know he had at least 7 last year.
He had a very weird stat, Adam, in that he was, I think, I just saw this week. I forget, and I can't credit the source because I don't remember, but he was I believe the number 1 wide receiver in college this past year in making contested catches.
PFF had it. Yeah, PFF.
Right, PFF. But he was also had a drops issue. So somehow he was making really, really, really tough catches, but he was also dropping
the drops.
Passes, and we know the quarterback play was bad.
But that doesn't excuse the same kind of drop.
That's true.
Slot screens, short area passes, or he's trying to get a field before he has the football. That's what I was told by more than one team. Both the receiver coaches, and they noticed the same exact thing. They both said it's extremely correctable, actually very easy.
Right.
And that at this level, the coaching is so much better. Now, I know the Eagles have had some issues, obviously last year, and we're talking about what happened there. But I'm expecting to be much better going forward.
All right, we're going to move on. I want to tell our listeners, though, make sure you're following PHL Sports Nation and reading all their great stuff at phlsportsnation.com. They are enhancing the fans' experience by covering all 4 Philly sports teams like nobody else does. Check them out at their website, phlsportsnation.com, or follow them on Twitter at phlsportsnation. They are for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. And they're just a great website to get content from. So check them out, phlsportsnation.com. And, of course, we'll pause right now for a word from our other great sponsors. All right, Adam, before we get out of here, let's look at the roster as it is right now. It's at 81 as we record this Wednesday night on July 29th. So they still have to get down to 1 guy. How does it work with the 3 COVID list players? They're still on.
They count. They count.
Yeah, they count.
Yeah.
All right. So when do they have to get down to 80 by? Because the agreement isn't really officially ratified yet.
Yeah. Well, technically, no, it's agreed upon, but it hasn't been signed.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
They've got extra time to do this. We're going to see more opt-outs. They've got to the 16th to get from 90 to 80. They're at 81 in my calculations, Geoff.
Right.
Which I actually, folks, a lot of stuff that I don't tweet, I put on our board when it comes to the Eagles, or on our Facebook board. So I put the cuts and where they're at. They're at 81 in my calculations. So they only got, it sounds funny, because you and I can make a case. There are 2 or 3 guys at receiver that can easily cut, but as you outlined earlier in our show here, Geoff, I don't think they could do that right now.
No,
they're not
they
in a position to be cutting more guys. Yeah,
they can't cut a receiver, and you can't cut a linebacker.
I would say, right? Oh God, no. I would say one of these safeties, because they've got 8 safeties.
Yeah.
Depending on what their signing bonus was, we're talking about Graylin Arnold or Elijah Riley,
right?
Or Michael Jaquette. Or Jack Jaquette, yeah, I guess that's how you pronounce it. And Craig James, by the way, he's a slot receiver. I know slot corner. He did a good job for being thrown in there off the street, but how many slot corners do you need? I mean, really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking if I'm the Eagles, I'd rather take a look at Graylin Arnold or at Prince Smith than Craig
James.
Craig James, right?
Yeah.
Is it possible that they just don't make any moves in case somebody else opts out? Because then, if someone opts out,
they could wait. Yeah, they don't need to do anything right now. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
We remember we did a show a couple weeks ago. I think we got all but one right of the 10 guys that they cut.
Yes.
I think it wasn't real difficult. I mean,
right.
This is we'll do this, folks. You know what we ought to do? Right before that Saturday, maybe we'll because there's no preseason. Maybe it'll be that Thursday. Folks, go to our board on Facebook, and we'll We'll give our final 53. Our initial 53, obviously. Never.
Right.
It's the fluid 53 because it could change the next day, and then it does. It's never the final 53.
Right.
Joe Osman, by the way, a couple points before we get out of here. Joe
Mhm.
Osman's not on PUP. We've been telling people. We told him 3 months ago.
Right.
ACL's good. He's going to be ready to go. He's not on PUP. There was I guess Doug Peterson said that Ryan McLeod had an injury, but to this point he's not on PUP. But we'll keep an eye on that. But that's it. From Nick Gary did have surgery after the season, but he's not on PUP. So they're doing okay with that stuff.
All right. What about running back right now? I mean, we've talked for a while about adding to that area or even offensive line. Although they brought in Jason Peters, I think they're done with. I would think that they're done with offensive line unless they want to continue to bring in another veteran, Adam. But running back, Shady felt like he was lobbying out there.
Here's what I know, just from a team source. He's been on the list since March, but he was down the list. Hyde was 1, Freeman's 1A.
Right.
I don't know who 3 or 4 or 5 is. I know that Shady's within that number.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a great list when you look at the available free agent running backs. There's a reason why they're out there. When you're available in July, and remember Damien Williams opted out. That was a surprise on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So Freeman, you would think that the Chiefs, if he's willing to be reasonable, would at least call his new agent, Drew Rosenhaus. I'm sure Drew will call them anyway. But if you look at the available running backs, Geoff, that are out there, Lamar Miller's a guy who's another Rosenhaus client who's coming back from ACL reconstruction, but he's running. He wants people to know that. Isaiah Crowell hit me up a couple months ago on Twitter. We were talking a private message. He said he's running and he's ready to go, but he's strictly a 2-down back. He's a power back. Powell's got good versatility, but he's in his 30s. Marshawn, they wouldn't do, I don't think.
Hold on, are you telling me that Isaiah Crowell just slid into your DMs like that?
Yeah, look, what happened was I think he was following me, and he'd see me talk about the veteran running backs, and he said, "Hey, man, I'm healthy."
All right.
I said, "Can I go with that?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Are you running?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right, great." Spencer Ware, I was told they didn't want, and then that's about it.
All right, cool. So I guess we'll see. I mean, again, I don't think it's something that Howie has to address now.
No, not now. No, right. Good point.
Not even when they start practicing. I mean,
that's the whole point.
Even until before the season. Yeah.
Right. Take a look. That's what I was saying earlier before we get out here. Take a look at these guys in the first 2 weeks of practices. Okay, in mid, second week of August. Get through the third week into the fourth week. If they look good, you don't need to. Linemen, you got Pryor. You got Mailata, okay? Mailata should be fine soon. I'm assuming this, but this is my understanding. Okay, you wanted to see Mailata for 3 years, okay? This is his third year. You got to eventually evaluate him. Let him be the top backup swing tackle. I know he's never played in a regular season game, but Geoff, at some point you got to know.
At some point, you have to know, and you have to give him the chance to at least win or not win the spot. So I'm actually looking forward. Well, we'll see what we can see. But
you're Mr. Young Guy. You want all the young guys in. You've been saying it for 3 months. Come on, man. Don't back out.
By the way, speaking of something I've been saying, I wanted to clarify something I said, not in the last podcast, but the one before that. It was at the end, and I re-listened to it, and I think what I said actually misrepresented a little bit how I feel. We were talking about, we were answering the question from Andre Smith, I believe, on the Facebook group page, and one of Andre's points was that he felt that the team's roster building approach is the best that he's seen in their 40 years of being a fan. And I said, well, I wouldn't, I'm not, I don't exactly agree with that. And then I went on to say a few things, and I want to make it clear that I do think the Eagles have the right identity and game plan for what they want to do. They build through the trenches, and I like what they've done on the offensive line, and I like what they've done on the defensive line. And clearly that's been their identity for a long time. You build from the inside out, and it works. So I have no issue with their roster building approach or their philosophy. It really was just about the draft that you and I were talking about, and how, sometimes I don't know if they're going for a different model football player every year or two, or if they just have the one template that this is an Eagle and they stick to that all the time. So it's hard to tell by their drafts because they've been a little bit of a mixed bag.
No, so that's okay. What I would add to that is they have the right approach. it's the valuations have to be better in the college draft. Their free agent evaluations are off the hook. Like Roseman, if we looked at Roseman since 16, show me a better team in free agency. Mm-hmm. But draft,
draft. Talk about the draft, but I don't think it's just
mixed.
valuation. I don't think it's just valuation.
Oh, I think it's been an issue.
Wait a minute. You and I are both on the same page, I thought, as far as taking a backup quarterback in the second round.
That was okay. No, that is hell yeah. Of course it is.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
But overall, though, overall, you hit on it. The approach is great in terms of roster building. You go front to back, both lines. That's how you win. Joe Douglas told me, I remember talking to Joe about his philosophy. He got it from Ozzie Newsome. Howie Roseman got it from Joe Banner. Joe Banner got it from Bill Walsh. Okay, that's the way you build it. But here's the problem. Sometimes when they miss, what we use a market correction. They then, instead of taking the best player available, sometimes they take another position where they might have missed to overcorrect it. And I think sometimes you got to be careful with that. And that's a slippery slope, though. I love the Rager pick. I think they're going to hit a home run there. And I know some teams, Geoff, in our reporting, had us 2 on them. I'm not worried about. Justin Jefferson is a more ready player. But Jalen Rager, again, it's never about the first year. It's about totality of the career. Right. I think Jalen Rager is going to be a better football player. But after that, Geoff, I just something you and I have talked about privately, and we've talked about it on our show, is taking players when they probably should have gone later. And that plays into what you're talking about is value, your grading, or again, it's how you think they should be fitting with your football team. And just making sure you're taking the right player and not just taking because you need that player. That's, I think that's playing into what you were saying a couple of minutes ago.
Yes. All right. Thanks for everybody for listening. Make sure you're checking out InsideTheBirds.com. We've done a lot of work there in the last 2 weeks, a lot of season or training camp preview type of stuff with myself. Andrew DeCecco has been doing a great job. Adam Caplan will be having a notebook, I'm sure, soon within the next few days, an NFL notebook. And we will continue to update the website as, training camp's now here. So we'll be a little bit more active with our content on InsideTheBirds.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Want to thank our producer, Hunter Brody. Check out his work on YouTube, Sports Talk with Broads. And also make sure you're checking out his podcast, Process, that he does with former Villanova basketball star Darryl Reynolds. And check him out on Twitter, @Broads81. And if you're loving baseball being back, even with the Marlins ruining it for the Phillies and the rest of the league a little bit, you got to check out our Powder Blue podcast on the Phillies. That's me, Hunter Brody, and Frank Close, Phillies insider from 97.3 ESPN. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.